Hi, everybody. Welcome to the PC Perspective Podcast. This is episode 141 for February 10th, 2011. I'm Ryan Schrout.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
And I'm last in a long line of idiots named Josh Walrath.
So everybody that went in front of you is an idiot, too? I don't like that.
Well, I was at the end of the line, so...
True.
Yes.
True. Alan
it was a short line, though.
He is
can't really
resting
complain.
He's resting his minute frame at a Holiday Inn on his travels from Virginia to wherever he's going, Texas or something like that. Moving to warmer climates, perhaps. We're going to continue to talk to you, however, about PC hardware. Not a whole lot of reviews or I guess really kind of in-depth news after last week. I think the entire market decided that they wanted to settle down after the whole Cougar Point chipset recall and stuff. So what we're going to start out with instead, totally off the beaten path or the normal path for us, is a review of some new speakers, 2.1 channel speakers actually, from maybe a surprise entry into the market, and that would be Corsair. And Josh, you got to spend, I don't know, a couple of weeks with these speakers now, and I guess you came away pretty impressed.
You know, I still want to talk about Cougar Point. I mean, whoever named that in Intel was just an absolute genius. You know, I'm turning into an older man, and certainly my dating prospects for younger women are shrinking. So, you know,
You're
I
too
want to
old
know
for
about
Cougars.
Cougar Point.
Yeah.
Sorry, Josh, you've met your best before date for the Cougars, I think.
the Cougars with, you know, here, boy, here's a DS. Come and talk to me. Anyway,
Yeah, pretty much.
So, speakers. We haven't done those a whole lot around here, but you know, if you really kind of look back at computer audio back in the early 90s when we started to see actual sound cards on PCs, the first audio speakers that we had, multimedia things, were these two little small satellites, and maybe I should do like this instead of like this on the video. But anyway, small satellites, battery powered most of the time, sounded crappy. But you know what? Gateway and Dell and all those guys were selling multimedia systems with these little crappy speakers. And then Altec Lansing came around, and they had their ACS series, which had the two satellites and the subwoofer, and it was actual decent audio. Decent as compared to the 2.0 speakers that were coming before it. Well, throughout the years, we've seen a lot of really interesting models come out. Altec Lansing really, you know, they led for a while. And then we had other guys like Logitech come in. Klipsch had some absolutely fantastic speakers for the time. And we're getting to the point where computer audio really is getting not quite to the level of home audio. And certainly when you're talking about budget, computer audio has a long, long ways to go, because the most expensive speakers you can buy for computer is probably around $400. And when you go to home audio stuff, you've got Macintosh garbage and really high-end speakers. The next thing you know, you've blown $50,000 on audio. But we're not quite at that point on the PC. Well, Corsair has decided to throw their hat into the ring, and they have done so. Their first blow was the HSA1, I believe, headphones.
Well, there were USB. There was the HS1 headphone, and then more recently the HS1A, which the only difference is the HS1s were USB headphones, and the HS1As are the analog versions of that.
Gotcha. But anyway, they have entered the audio market. They have entered quite a few different markets. If you consider that 10 years ago they were doing memory only, and now they've come out with a line of award-winning power supplies. I was talking to somebody else from the industry, and they said Corsair is probably one of the best in contracting out power supplies and really just getting their bill of materials and what they want to use, and putting it all together in just a really complete package that nobody has really been able to meet or match so far. In audio, they're hoping to do the very same thing. They have two sets of actual speakers out. One are the SP2500s. These are the lower-end speakers. They're about 35 watts overall, and they're going to be around $100 or less. They're not really well available yet, and we haven't had a review, but they wanted to make a big bang in the marketplace, and so they released this very high-end set of 2.1 speakers. That is, 2.1 means two satellite speakers and one subwoofer. These are amazingly well designed. Sometimes when you hear about speaker companies, throwing kind of the kitchen sink into design, it may not always come out as they wanted. It sometimes comes out as a muddled mess, and it just does not live up to expectations. Well, Corsair was able to somehow balance everything out and produce a really good sounding set of speakers. I mean, amazingly good. I'm an audio enthusiast. I have, unfortunately, a very small budget for my enthusiasm, and so I tend to really look for a lot of products that are really, really good values for the price, and still are able to deliver good sound. I've been a big fan of Paradigm speakers for home audio for a lot of years because they do a lot of things just really, really well, and they're not stratospheric when it comes to price. Well, Corsair has brought kind of the whole feel of these, higher-end home audio speakers to the computer. And certainly, other companies have attempted this, and, there are some still good 2.1 systems out there from other manufacturers. But Corsair has really, really raised the bar. They have so many damn features in these speakers, it's not even funny. They still use paper cones, which I'm a little disappointed in, but at the same time, we don't really know how these paper cones will degrade with use. I mean, it's not the 1970s.
What are the other options besides paper that they could have used?
Well, I mean, there's composites, there's Kevlar, there's complex plastics and polys that they can use. Like I think B&W Audio from England, they use Kevlar. Paradigm, I know, use a lot of poly type, high density polyethylene type cones, and a lot of these retain stiffness without breaking down. Paper has a bad reputation of, after a couple of years, they really start breaking down in terms of stiffness, and it kind of muddles the sound. Well, I've talked to some folks around, and they said, well, the technology of the epoxies and resins that they use in these paper cones have really improved throughout the years. And I mean, this is now 2011, and we're having better throughout sound through chemistry. So I don't think it's going to be as big of an issue as it may be as compared to like 10 or 15 years ago.
Sure, especially since they did a good job on the surround.
Yeah.
You mentioned the surround's rubber.
I did. It's a nice solid rubber surround. It's not this cheap foam surround that I live in a drier climate, and after a couple of years of use, a lot of these foam surrounds start cracking, and this introduces some additional insufficiencies in the surround, and so you get a driver that is not going to move as well, and not only that, but it could move asymmetrically due to the structural insufficiencies of the foam around the drivers. So their construction of these speakers are very, very good. It's a medium density fiberboard for the subwoofer. It's a fourth order bandpass, I believe it's called, subwoofer. It's got a sealed chamber that has the sub in there, and the front of the sub goes into another chamber that's ported. And so basically what this does is it creates a natural type filter for the frequencies that the sub is able to produce, because a lot of the higher frequencies are not going to be able to actually get out the port. But the lower ones from like 180 to, I believe that these are rated down to 35 hertz, will be able to get out there. And, it's just a really good sounding set of speakers. Gaming is good. And part of that is that it actually has some DSP and equalization functionality built in. The equalization functionality is more appropriate for the different types of gaming and movie watching and music. And while some of the DSP stuff, like I think the big one is late night, they've got all digital crossovers in this sub, and going to the speakers, that if you choose late night, it shunts all of the lower bass frequencies all to the mid-range drivers. So you still get these drivers pushing out, 50 hertz type stuff. I mean, they're probably straining for it, but it allows it to not have the big thump of the subwoofer. So you've got small children sleeping a couple of rooms away, and you're playing Counter-Strike, and you pick up the MP5 submachine gun and you start popping people. They're not going to wake up because, the house isn't shaking. This sub and this system, it has 6 discrete amplifiers. The sub takes 2 of them, and they're bridged, and they're 60 watts apiece, so the sub takes 120 watts. And as something that I've never seen before in a computer set of speakers are bi-amped satellites. Now, if you have a regular two-way speaker and a subwoofer, then you've got one set of wires going to each satellite speaker. And now that one set, one pair of wires, pushes not only the driver, but the tweeter. And it's got, usually a passive crossover in there, so it shunts off the frequencies that go to the mid-range and the frequencies that go to the driver, but they're still sharing the same amp. And so you could get some strange, interference at times depending on how the signals are done. And but these are bi-amped, so that means the tweeters have their own amplifier, and the drivers have their own amplifier. So the control unit and the DSP, it is able to assign, these frequencies to the different amplifiers, and then they go ahead and amplify each individual component. And it makes for just really, really clean sound. I mean, this is something that it really is only seen in high-end home theater audio. And, high-end, music listening audio. So, I mean, you need to read the entire review, because there's 4,500 some odd words that I put onto paper, or at least, virtual paper. And I can't talk that many words without drinking excessive amounts of alcohol.
That's good. That's good.
So you need to go there. Music, it was tremendous. A wonderful, transparent, bright sounding, but still has plenty of mid-range and really an excellent bass response. And, you could run these things at 100% power for hours on end, and it would never hurt the speaker system or make them crack or melt into a small slag pile. I mean, it just is a well-built set of speakers. The only downside is it's going to be about $250. Now, not everybody wants to spend $250 for a set of 2.1 speakers.
It's pretty high, I got to say.
Well,
it is,
set up for like 3 to 5 feet away, right? You're not going to fill a room with these.
It's not going to fill a large room with sound, just because the design of the speakers is meant to be biased towards, near field type applications. So you've got to be 3 to 5 feet away from these speakers to get the best sound, sitting in the sweet spot. Certainly it's got enough power and it's loud enough to fill a room, but you're just not going to get the same effect as compared to, listening to milder volumes and being that close to the satellites. But after saying that, if you spend any amount of time on your computer, you appreciate and want high-end audio for your listening pleasure, whether it be movies, games, or music, then these really are some of the best 2.1 speakers I've ever heard. for a computer.
Gotcha.
They've still got a ways to go for home audio,
Right.
but for what you pay and what you get, it's a whole lot of speakers.
Okay.
Or at least 3.
Now, you said at the beginning of the show you wanted to continue to talk about Intel's recall issues. Intel would rather us not. But I figured we would check in with Jeremy here, since he's kind of been the guy who's been keeping up with this type of stuff. I know last week when we talked about the whole recall issue, that pretty much all the motherboard manufacturers had said, yeah, we're gonna replace it. No, but a lot of people hadn't started putting the processes in place for that. So I'm wondering now, Jeremy, if we look at like ASUS, MSI, Gigabyte, ECS, any of those major companies, what kind of services are we seeing in terms of is it as simple as everybody gets a refund and or everybody gets a replacement? Are they saying exact parts yet or anything like that?
Well, right now we've got MSI, Gigabyte, and ASUS pretty much putting out the same message, which is, hey, you're an early adopter. You bought one of those P67 or H67 motherboards. Mm-hmm. At the very least, you're getting a B3 back, the stepping that is not going to have the issue with the SATA 2.
Right.
So ASUS has come out with specific instructions and a nice model list of exactly which boards it is that they're looking at. Gigabyte has done the same and is essentially stopped shipping motherboards, period, that are using the P67 or H67.
Right.
So, again, and MSI pretty much putting out the same thing, although they specifically add that the gaming notebooks, you're getting an upgrade. They're not going to rip out the motherboard and replace it. Here's a brand new one. All of them are pretty much saying it doesn't matter what the condition the motherboard comes back in is, they're going to honor it. So if you do kind of feel like going crazy, hey, at least you'll know what the B3 should be able to do. And in the most part, they are shipping you out a FedEx box or a UPS box. You put your motherboard in that, fire it back to them, and they fire another one back to you. Gigabyte is the only one who's given us a date, and they're matching up with what Intel has said, which is that towards the end of February, they're actually looking at getting the B3s off the line and onto resellers' hands. So we're really hoping it's a first come, first serve, not the retail chain that's going to get the newest boards first. It's going to be the users who went out there and bought them. That's sort of a happy assumption, but it makes a lot of sense and sort of continues the way that they're treating this as a, hey, something bad has happened, you're a customer, we're going to fix you, and then we're going to go to Intel, and they got enough money to fix us.
One of the things that I'm looking through the various responses here that's kind of annoying is that it looks like only ASUS right now is doing anything close to like an advanced replacement or what they call, I guess they're calling it an advanced replacement, where they are willing to ship you the new product as soon as they see verification that the product that you have is in transit to them. Like they give you a prepaid shipping label and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. It looks like the other ones are requiring you to send in the board, wait for them to get the board, replace it, and send you a new one back, which I'm guessing by the time you take shipping costs into account is going to be at least 5 to 6 business days. And it looks like only the ASUS one is going to try to cut down on that, because if you're one of those users that has a Sandy Bridge system and you're going to continue to use the motherboard and the platform for this, given period of time, which I think is the right thing to do. When you make that switch, then you're going to have a down period without any product. And I think what's really kind of critical here for the best customer service is to minimize that downtime as much as possible. I can understand if people don't want to do the best case, which is to send you the replacement, let you swap it out, put the old one in the other box and send it away. I figure with a credit card hold or something like that, they'd be willing to do that, but it doesn't look like anybody's really taken my advice in that area.
No, absolutely right. Well, and MSI is even weirder. Technically, they'll mail that 3-day shipping label 2 weeks before you can first get the new motherboard. So you could be without it for, more than just 4 or 5 business days if you wanted to ship it back right away.
As soon as you got it, yeah. It's kind of weird.
But as they say, hey, in most part, they're saying any conditions. So if you want to do some overclocking experiments and just play with it, go for it.
That is this. It's a good time to play around with your liquid nitrogen overclocking skills, perhaps.
Yeah.
Or just pour on the board and see if you can get it to run really fast that day. Before we move on and talk about a couple of other quick things with Intel, we'll take a quick break and thank today's podcast sponsor. All right, we thank them for that. Now, we do have a couple of other interesting things to talk about here on the CPU front. One was Intel provided what they called in a press release a chipset or a chip support chip design issue update. Essentially, what they announced is that they are going to begin reshipping the current B2 flawed version of the chipset to certain PC manufacturers to use in PC systems that they quote here. What does it say? Basically, where they say where we're sure that users are not
configurations that are not impacted by the design issue. There it is.
Configurations are not impacted. So that to me means one of two things. The safest thing, and the only thing that I hope they allowed to do is that if they want to keep shipping notebooks, that's fine, because when you get a notebook, you're usually talking about one, maybe two at the most SATA channels that are ever going to be in use. You don't have headers on them on those motherboards like you would traditionally think. And if those designs either A were already attached to the SATA 6 gigabit per second ports, or B can be easily shifted just by moving a couple of wires on that motherboard using the same chip, then if they say that's not affected, then I guess that's not really a problem. The other option, which I'm hoping they're not doing, is they're starting to allow users or system builders to send out systems, new systems with that broken chipset that then have like an add-in PCI Express or PCI SATA card in them, where you can replace the 4 broken channels of the SATA, the Intel Cougar Point chipset with like a Promise or a Marvell or some other, PCI or PCIe based controller card. Because my problem with that then is, unless they're going to ship it with duct tape over the other 4 SATA ports, there are going to be, there are going to be times where Joe consumer that doesn't really know that all this has happened, throws away the warning that comes in the box, says, hey, don't use those ports. They're going to get a new hard drive in a year or two, and they're going to plug it in, and then in 2 years they might have this problem, or 1 year they might have this problem. It's probably pretty minimal, but, I keep thinking that something like that's going to happen. I don't really know where this pressure was coming from that Intel decided they needed to get that out. I mean, they had pretty much already announced a full recall. They had announced that they were stopping the shipment of all kinds of different products. So, Wall Street and all the financial side of things, they already knew the extent of the damage. Why they needed to try to make up some of this stuff is kind of confusing to me. But that goes hand in hand then with another, not really announcement, this kind of came out through PC World, that Intel was going to begin shipping the dual-core variant of Sandy Bridge on February 20th, on or about February 20th, which is interesting. That is before the expected availability of any Sandy Bridge motherboards again. They could be shipping this dual-core variant of Sandy Bridge with the very first batch of B3 revision Cougar Point chipsets, maybe to go out to notebook vendors or system builders or something like that. It seems pretty close to me, pretty like tight schedules there. But I think the only thing that's obvious here is Intel is trying desperately to convince its investors and its customers and its partners that the delay and the effect that this chipset design flaw is having on them as a company is as minimal as possible. That's making almost no difference. I'm not sure, Josh, if you have any other thoughts on why they would want to do these types of things. Is it really just, because you've got to think, I would think, that they're selling these broken chipsets to these vendors that want it pretty close to nothing, pretty close to free. And then with the dual core coming out, I don't know if they're just, they want to show, hey, look, the Sandy Bridge processor's not affected. We're, it's only this one chip. Don't worry about this. Everything else is on schedule. We're still doing all that kind of stuff.
Well, probably a big part of it is just economics. That you've got all of this product, you've got millions of chips out there that even though they're $25 a piece for the chipsets for Sandy Bridge, I mean it's still a hefty chunk of change when you're talking these numbers, and so they're going to want to sell off as many as they can in areas where they do not think their liability is going to be as great or the return rate. So with, they can use these chipsets in laptops, which will only perhaps even use, one SSD and one optical drive at most. And, as long as you attach them to the SATA 6 ports, you're golden, you're fine. And so they're able to do that, but I think that they've got some, pretty severe rules in place to make sure that, somebody doesn't try to end around and use the SATA 2G, SATA 3G controller. So that's, they're just limiting their financial liability and trying to get products out as soon as possible because, I mean, they're still producing Sandy Bridge. They've got lots of them in the warehouse, and they need them to get sent out to make more room in the warehouse for more chips.
Gotcha.
Sound right? Sound correct?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of our Intel update for the week. Not a lot going on here. Let's talk a little bit about AMD. Josh, you posted something here in the show notes that I didn't know about. Is this Bob Rivet?
Robert Rivet.
Robert Rivet, not
real
Rivet.
fast.
It's not French or anything.
3 times. He's been their COO for 11 years. I think he came on in year 2000, and so that's the chief operating officer. I mean, they are not in charge of any type of engineering type work. They are, more in the financial, keeping the business upright, keeping them in the red in this case, which may not be a good thing. But anyway, COOs usually don't last long. I've talked to a couple of people in AMD, and there was just, kind of a big shrugging of shoulders and thinking this wasn't like Dirk Meyer being pushed out. This was, Bob just kind of signing off and going on to greener pastures. He's not a young man. And so, being 11 years as the COO of a pretty big company in a very competitive marketplace is probably got to be wearing on you. So 11 years is a long time. He's gone. Going to be some changes, but in terms of roadmap, you're going to see very little deviation.
All right. And what is this talk of slowly? We talked about last week, AMD, whether or not they should figure out a way to take advantage of this Intel flub to sell some chips. Now, I saw an ad last week or earlier this week, I think on that same PC World story where we talked about the dual-core Sandy Bridge processor shipping that used the tagline, willing, ready, and stable to stable. Yeah, it's kind of it's pretty tame, but it's definitely a rib at Intel right now. Unfortunately, I don't know if that URL ever started working again, Jeremy, but it looks like it was broken when we first saw it. The AMD.com/stable was the URL listed on the banner.
It now redirects you to shop.amd.com.
Okay.
Yeah, someone finally figured it out.
Yeah, instead of a 404, that's a positive.
Yeah.
So is that what you were pointing out, Josh, or is there some other way that AMD is attempting to profit from this Intel fall?
Yeah, I mean, you had talked to the guys at AMD last week, and they said, well, we don't really have any plans in place to do this. Well, somebody up the line said, hey, this is a golden opportunity to maybe get a couple of, extra customers, and so they're putting out these ads.
I like to think that they listen to our show, Josh.
Oh, obviously, because...
Yeah.
You are an industry-leading reporter of technology news.
If I could disconnect you, I would.
Yeah, you probably can. But also, I have heard through the grapevine that a lot of OEMs are coming to AMD. You know, these guys who utilize both Intel based platforms and AMD, and they're saying, you know, we're maxed out on our i7 stuff, our i5 stuff. You know, we had X amount of the Sandy Bridge things, all of those. I mean, we can't sell them. We've got these big gaping holes in our lineup. What can you do to help us out? And so AMD has dropped the prices on their quads and their 6s, their SP850 Southbridge, and you know, their whole lineup of chipsets, both integrated and standalone. They have all proven to be very, very solid. And so I think that they have gained a little bit of momentum and a little bit of goodwill from a lot of these OEMs by being able to provide, you know, a solution that can very, very quickly fill the void left by Sandy Bridge. Now, certainly these are not high-end solutions, sure. but they will fill a product niche for a lot of these companies. And you know, it's not just OEMs; it's people in retail, it's end users who see, you know, I could have had this SATA 6, you know, based, you know, system on Intel, and, you know, I may not be the hugest gamer or multitasker or whatever. You know, I can get something pretty similar from AMD that's not going to blow up on me in 2 years for, you know, $150 less. Well, you know, that's tempting. Not everybody's going to do it. Some people are going to go back to the older versions of the Intel Core architecture.
Sure.
But for the most part, well, not for the most part, but, you know, for some situations, AMD has profited off of this in areas that we as, you know, reviewers and press guys, you know, may not often see. And it's only until we hear stories from these larger OEMs and from AMD themselves, what's kind of going on behind the curtains. So, you know, I think that AMD has profited from this. It's not going to make them, you know, incredibly profitable in Q1 sales, just from, you know, the desktop kind of collapsing on Intel due to Sandy Bridge, but it's going to be a positive for them, and you know, hopefully for them and their company and competition in general, you know, they can build enough goodwill with a lot of these, you know, manufacturers and perhaps create some new partnerships that you know, will help them out in the future.
And we've already seen a couple of instances of motherboard manufacturers going exactly down this road where they are, you know, taking their marketing dollars that were promoting P67 motherboards, and they've either moved on to just promoting graphics cards, or in some cases we've seen motherboards or AMD platform motherboards being the new choice of where the promotions are going to and stuff. So I think a lot of this will pan out and will be pretty good for AMD in the long run. If nothing else, just, you know, this doesn't really make AMD look better necessarily, but anything that sullies the name of your competition in kind of a roundabout way makes you look a little bit better. So, also AMD has some more good news. Apparently they shipped a decent amount of APUs in December, 1 million plus, according to what Josh is putting in here. Now, I want to say this doesn't mean they sold 1 million to consumers, because these products are really just starting to come out into the market. When we talked about last week, the Toshiba E240 notebook that I kind of briefly tested and played with last week, you know, that's kind of like the first or second or third product we've seen released with an AMD Fusion APU in it at all. But apparently they shipped 1 million plus to customers in December. Is that right?
Yeah, according to you know, information coming from Taiwan, AMD has done very, very well with the APU, namely their, you know, C50 and E350. I think E350 is really their big seller right now. We've seen guys, you know, Asus, MSI, and Gigabyte all release, you know, motherboards with this CPU integrated on it. This is a big deal for AMD. I mean, it's not going to be huge amount of money because each processor that they sell is not going to be that expensive. I mean, it's still fabbed by TSMC. It's a small die size. Sure. You know, I think it's the ASP for the high end is probably going to be, and this is combined with the Hudson Southbridge. It's going to be in between $65 and $75 for the Duo. And in fact, I wouldn't doubt if it was less, even $45 to $55, because then you got to build the entire motherboard around it and sell it. And these guys are going to sell them for about $100 and $110. They're saying margins are going to be about 10% on these products, which, when you're talking motherboards, that's not bad. That's something that's very good for Asus and Gigabyte and MSI and all these other guys, because usually their margins are just absolutely razor thin, and you wonder how in the hell they even survive. But AMD has done well. They've delivered. They delivered not only on time but a little before time. They've got a compelling product. It performs well. It just sips power as compared to what we have seen previously from AMD with their Neo and Turion type processors. So, this is a very positive thing for AMD. I'm trying not to be a fanboy, and I'm not, because I like Intel just as much. I like technology in general, but I also like competition. I think that having two, very, very even competitors will make it so that I could buy a 6-core processor for $200 and be really happy about it. So, Q1 is probably going to be decent for AMD when you combine the strong APU sales with the stutter from Intel, which is going to last 2 months. So it's a positive in many ways for the industry, because Intel is just not able to totally overshadow its smaller competition.
There you go. All right, we're going to jump into some emails here. Email address to contact us is podcast@pcper.com. Voicemails, you can leave them for us. 1-888-38-PCPer, toll free in U.S. and Canada. Please give us a ring, leave us a funny message or a witty message, or a message that actually has real content in it so we can put some of that in the show every week. I think we're going to send our first email over to Josh for his choice, either a dramatic reading or a standard reading of an email about Blu-ray lossless audio.
I don't even have a chance here to clear my throat, which reminds me of a joke that's not terribly appropriate.
Not appropriate, no.
Email from Jeff about Blu-ray lossless audio. I enjoy playing my Blu-ray movies on my PC, but I want to get the full experience in terms of audio as well as video. What exactly do I need in order to have the ability to playback the lossless and master audio 5.1 soundtracks? Do I simply need a sound card or receiver that supports them, digital speakers, 5.1 receiver, or all of it? I've been trying to figure it out, but before I jump in, was wondering if you all have had any experience or setups that would shed some insight on how to go about it. From what I understand, even the Realtek audio codecs can decode the lossless audio. So you get 24-bit 192 kilohertz at max audio coming out of the analog plugs on the sound card or the motherboard. Now, the quality of that is going to differ from motherboard to motherboard, or if you get a sound card that can do such work. Now it's
he doesn't really say if he's looking for analog or digital, I guess, does he? It's because he's asking if he needs a 5.1 receiver
of sound cards. There are none that will be able to pass through digitally the lossless audio, namely DTS Master HD or Dolby True HD. Asus has a couple of cards. I think Ozentech has one. But the problem with that is that you need an HDMI cable going to a standalone receiver that can decode that higher bit, true, lossless. Well, it's not lossless, but it's essentially that audio, and be able to bit stream it. So if you've got a set of 5.1 computer speakers, just get a decent sound card that is able to handle 24-bit, 192 kilohertz, and is plenty enough muscle to do that, and you should be perfectly fine with it. But mileage is going to vary if you're going to go with a motherboard solution. I don't know if some of the VIA ones, codecs, can do the Blu-ray lossless audio. because that could mean, of course, different things. It could be, 7.1 PCM, could be the DTS HD or the Dolby True HD.
Right.
So it's still kind of a muddle and a mess, but you're not going to hear a whole lot of difference on most PC audio speakers, even if you got a high-end set of, the old Logitech Z5500s, and you've got them plugged into the analog ports. You're not going to hear a whole lot of difference in between even, DTS ES as compared to DTS HD Master Audio. So,
yeah, if you're listening to it locally, that's definitely, best answer. He doesn't mention that he wants to take it to like a home theater or anything like that, so I'm assuming that he's not. Home theater, you can look at the graphics card options as well that pass through that type of audio. The AMD HD 5000, 6000 series and the NVIDIA 400 and 500 series all do that relatively well. So we got another email here from John about Windows 7 installations. We'll pass this one on over to our Canadian.
Well, John, he says, "Hey guys, love the show and been a long-time watcher." He's got 2 questions. Oh, greedy. 2 questions. Is there a way to set up a custom installer Windows 7 on a USB drive that can install software such as Firefox or some other software while installing Win 7 from a fresh install, so that when I install Win 7, it installs the set of software? Starting off, yes and no. If you're looking for the old-style BART PE, where you're injecting in applications to be installed right off of the image, not so much. On the other hand, there are a couple of programs out there that integrate Windows 7 in, sort of that you pick and choose which portions of Windows that you can install, and I haven't really seen anyone adding any external applications, non-Microsoft applications to it, but I'm sure it's only a amount of time. And there are certainly ways where theoretically you can upgrade from Vista because you made a bad choice in your past to Windows 7 and essentially keep the programs that you had as Vista, which leads you to believe that, yes, there is going to be a way you can do this. I just haven't found it in the small time that I had after I read your email.
Right.
The second, looking to upgrade my ATI HD 4850 to a newer GPU, torn between the MSI TwinFrozer 2 OC560 Ti, or Titanium, depending on how you read it, MSI TwinFrozer 2 6952 gig, leaning towards the 6950s. I can use more than 2 displays on a single GPU, where you do need 2 NVIDIA cards to display more than one display. He likes to stay under $375, but the less he has to spend, the better. I do a lot of gaming and video encoding. Which card would you recommend for the money? Thanks for any help you can provide. Well, personally, just having made the choice of the 6950 over the 560, specifically for the reason that a lot of the 6950s are only 6950s because of the BIOS they're using. Hardware-wise, they are 6980s. This made it very attractive to me. And you're looking, in the same case, at MSI's custom cooling apparatus. But performance-wise, assuming it would not work, and just money-wise, what do you think? 560 Titanium or 6950?
It's really kind of it's pretty close. I think maybe I might lean towards the 6950, especially the 2 gig model if it's the same price range there that he's talking about. If he's even considering the ability to connect a third monitor as being a feature he's interested in, then I think it makes sense to go down that route. Performance is going to be pretty good either way. There are some cases where 6950 was better. There were some cases where the 560 Ti was better. So I would probably lean towards the direction of the AMD 6950 in his case. And also,
the feature set rules.
Yeah, someone in the chat room pointed out for the first question there. While the way of integrating it into like a Windows 7 installer disk is pretty difficult. There is that often used site ninite.com, NINITE.com, that you could go to and create as an installer for a bunch of applications. That you run one single installer and it will install a bunch of applications on your PC. It does include all the web browsers, Skype, Digsby, AIM, Thunderbird, iTunes, VLC, Audacity, Picasa, Office. I mean, there's tons that you can choose from. It'll generate you a single installer, and you can keep that locally, so you only have to run one more application, plus all your setups and stuff like that after the fact. So give that a look if that's something you're still on the lookout for. We got one more email here from Ray. Says he has a problem he needs some help with. He was in the process of upgrading the Sandy Bridge, but that is now on hold. His current specs are Core i5-750, 2 gigs of DDR3 memory, 1 terabyte hard drive, a GT240 1 gigabyte graphics card, ASUS P7H55M motherboard. I know I need to get a new graphics card and at least 1 more gig of RAM, but I cannot tell if I should wait till the end of the year or the next round of the Sandy wait till the end of the year for the next round of the Sandy Bridge chips. I'm also going to add an SSD for my boot drive. Can you help me with this? P.S. If I drop a GTX 570 into this, will it create a bottleneck? First, if you drop a GTX 570 into that configuration today, no, I do not think you're going to be creating a bottleneck. If you do that, I think I would go ahead and pick up 2 more gigs of memory, because 2 gigs is pretty low these days, especially with Windows 7 or Windows Vista running on any type of system. So I think 4 gigs of memory should kind of be your minimum at this point. The rest of the system is still pretty decent. He's talking about waiting until the end of the year, so I guess he's talking about, what is that, Ivy Bridge, Josh? So that's the next revamp after
22 nanometer stuff, but yeah, we're not going to see that until early next year. I
don't think that's something worth waiting for. I don't think that's, if you're getting a GTX 570 and you're going to get 4 gigs of memory, I think you'll probably be happy with that system still.
The i5 750 is still a pretty beefy processor. I mean, it's not gonna choke on anything that you're going to be using it on, unless you're on some kind of timeline and doing 3D rendering for Pixar.
Right.
And even then,
they should be paying for your computer.
Exactly.
SSD, always a great option. I mean, it sounds like that Ray here has a good idea of what he wants to do, and I think that his directions are pretty good there. I mean, I would go for that memory first. You could probably do the memory and the graphics card at the same time, because you could probably get cheap memory for really cheap. We're talking probably $40 less. SSD is obviously going to be a little bit more expensive if you get something like this Vertex 2 from OCZ, this 240 gig version. I mean, that's going to be, $400 something. Definitely worth it for SSD upgrades, without a doubt, but they are still pretty expensive. So there you go. Again, email address podcast@pcpro.com. We thank everybody for sending in their questions. We're going to get to hardware software picks of the week. I was going to pick with these OCZ SSDs, but we've kind of talked about those for a while. There's something else that I thought would be interesting to recommend. I don't think I had shown this yet. This is a Thermaltake BlacX 5G.
You got one.
Yeah. We got promised some of those and never delivered.
Well, here's good news for people who are listening and watching, but not you guys, is I'm going to give this one away at the end of the show, too. This is a USB 3 hard drive dock station. You can use an SSD, 2.5-inch drive or 3.5-inch drive, externally powered. Pretty nice. We've got a couple of these here from different companies and different things, and they're just really handy to have if you ever have any kind of hard drive sitting around, or you need to move data around pretty quickly. These are interesting to have. So stay tuned to the end of the show, and we'll give one away.
Because Thermaltake sounds so much better than Sharkoon.
It's true.
You can't make cool mascots though for Thermaltake.
No, you can't. Or get permission to color them.
Indeed. Jeremy, what is your pick here for hardware software for the week?
Well, since I had absolutely no time to prepare for this, I dug into Make Magazine, which is always good for something. So in this case, it's a little hardware hack that will make you a sous vide cooker. Sort of the big thing nowadays. You put whatever you're cooking, be it meat, veggies, eggs, into a vacuum-sealed pouch, drop it into a perfectly controlled bath of water. 4 hours later, you've got this beautiful steak. You just grill it up very, very quickly to give it some sear on the outside. And people are paying like $1,000, $2,000 for these devices. You go to a high-end restaurant and you're going to be paying $100 for a steak that's done this way or a hard-boiled egg that's done this way. And Make sort of figured out a way to put one together for about $100 using some really interesting and dirt cheap industrial sensors, which are essentially predicting the temperature if they turn on, as opposed to just being a binary, it's on, it's off. So these guys, the PID sensors, which, if I could remember what it stands for, and I don't think I can, but it's a controller that, a proportional integral derivative algorithm.
Of course.
Which figures out, okay, if I'm on for a second, the temperature is going to go up this much. If I'm on for 15 seconds, it's going to go up this much. So I'll go on for 7 seconds and then turn off, and the temperature will stay perfectly stable. So don't blow $1,000 on this to impress the girls. Build one yourself, because that's probably actually going to be more impressive.
Interesting. I don't know if I'm that creative, but I'll consider it.
The instructions are really simple.
Sous vide.
Well, all right. Josh, you got something for us?
Yeah, I do. Earlier today, and this is kind of a too little, too late hardware pick. But, every once in a while I pay attention to Mushkin, and today they had a tremendous deal. Remember a couple of months back, we had Micron come out with a 256 gig SSD drive based on an older Samsung controller for $256. Well, Mushkin kind of pushed this one aside, and they offered a 256 gig drive for $200 based on the Indilinx controller, and this was only available for about 15 minutes. But if you pay attention to their specials deal, and maybe even Facebook them, you'll get kind of some God, I can't even think of the frickin' word.
Coupons?
Not coupons. What, you want coupons? No, you'll get some forewarning about when these specials are going to come.
Oh.
And as I mentioned to the guys on the Yammer feed for PC Per, is like, hey guys, you can get a 256 gig fast SSD for $200 from Mushkin if you order now. And did you end up getting one, Ryan, or no?
No, I am trying to curb my random SSD purchases.
Yeah, but boy, that's sub $1 a gig for a pretty quick SSD. I mean, Indilinx is still nothing to spit at.
Because I think the crucial drives that I bought that were $1 a gig were also Indilinx drives, weren't they? I think so.
I thought they were Samsung. There was some of that first generation Samsung.
No, these were definitely not first. I would not have bought first generation Samsung controllers. I think they're Indilinx, but
anyway, but
regardless.
Still, yeah, $200 for 256 gig SSD.
Hey, way to let everybody
hard.
know too late, Josh. We appreciate that.
I know. Well, you know what? You got to have your podcast a day earlier.
Tell them to do their specials a day later. I don't know what to tell you.
Okay, I'll work with them.
Okay, so contest. Here we go. You want to win this Thermaltake BlacX 5G USB 3.0 external hard drive dock. All you have to do is send an email to our world-famous email address, podcast@pcper.com. Subject line must be contest. Otherwise, it's going to get filtered into the garbage because that's where everybody else's email always goes. Subject contest. And I have to have you put something else in the body of the text. You need to put your name, address, and phone number in there so that if I pick you, I don't have to worry about getting back in touch and find what your address and all that kind of stuff is. Just put all that in there right away. And also, what articles, what subjects, what interesting things would you like to see people like Josh, Jeremy, myself, Alan, Steve, Ken, somebody else dive into at PC Perspective? What are you guys most interested in seeing? Do you want to see more reviews of speakers? Do you want to see more reviews of P67 motherboards for some reason? Are you looking for more articles that compare your aging 7800 GT graphics card to the latest 560 or 580 cards, just so you know how much performance benefit you're going to get there?
I've got a good idea.
Okay.
Random videos of random desoldering of components. Wouldn't that just rock?
So that's just for Alan.
Yeah.
Okay. We can do that. I mean, sure. We need more video content anyway. So again, to enter the contest, podcast@pcper.com. Subject line must be contest. Inside, name, address, phone number, and then what type of articles and content you want to see more regularly or created or started or updated at PC Perspective. So there you go. That's going to do it. PCPer.com/podcast is the address to send to your friends, neighbors, and loved ones to share in the warmth and humor and fun that is PC hardware with us. Twitter.com/Ryan Schrout or /PCPer. Facebook.com/PCPer. There's some other stuff probably that you can look at. That's going to be it. We're going to sign off this week. Next week we should be back to full strength. That means Alan will be here. He doesn't add a whole lot in physical strength, but mental strength is what I'm really thinking about. He'll add.
Do you really think he's going to have an internet connection by that time?
No,
wait, I'm talking about Alan.
He's probably
never mind.
Oh yeah,
he's got satellite on the minivan right
crap.
Now. So
he went to the neighbors and ran cable underground so that he could have all that stuff set up beforehand. I'm sure with his lime green car. So that's it. We're going to end the show. I'm Ryan Schraub.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
And I'm Josh Walrath.
Thanks for listening. See you next week.